Hubris, defined as excessive pride or self-confidence. Dragon Ball, a show that inspires, gives hope, and unites nations. Yet hubris has plagued Dragon Ball since day one, and has built upon itself, causing immeasurable pain and damage on a scale so unprecedented that it makes Dark Souls look like Peppa Pig. Okay, listen, we all know that Dragon Ball characters have a chronic addiction to hubris. You would especially know this if you've been watching videos here on the Super Kami Jacob channel, so if you want to have a billion IQ and the ability to avoid backshots, subscribe! But with all this hubris going around, I simply have one question. Who has the most hubris of them all, and onto what scale? Well, to determine the answer to this mystery, we need to go back to the beginning of Dragon Ball Z Kai, the superior dub over Dragon Ball Z. Fight me! Starting off in the Saiyan Saga, we've got Goku, my glorious, non-hubris king. But apart from this, nothing really hubris-worthy happens, except for Vegeta coming to Earth and gloating about his superior genetics of having a receding hairline, being 4'3", and having superior techniques that make him a force to be reckoned with. But now would be a good time to explain how we are going to be ranking these various hubris moments. You see, what Goku and Vegeta did right here would earn them a single point on the hubris scale. 1 point on the hubris scale basically amounts to a character essentially being cocky or full of themselves, but the consequences as a result are just kind of none, or something that would have happened regardless of their hubris or not. So basically, in other words, it just kind of makes them look dumb. Like Goku thumb pointing at himself and then getting kneed in the stomach would have happened regardless, but he still looks pretty stupid. But let's look on the bright side. At least throughout no time in Dragon Ball ever again does Goku thumb point at himself. But continuing on, nothing else really happens in the Saiyan Saga, so let us move on to the Namek Saga. The first half of this saga, there isn't really a whole lot of hubris going around, except for maybe Vegeta thinking he could take on the average Starbucks employee who just got done working a brutal shift of making a single drink, and being as overworked as they are understandably pissed off.
Oh no.
But where the real hubris begins is with Horny. Get it? Because he has horns. Who basically thought that he could take on the bowl cut and bald man after taking Goku's body without consent. But what he failed to consider was the uncle and nephew chemistry that's been built up since the start of this saga, and it is simply too much for Horny to bear, and he eventually loses his fight and gets turned into a frog. Now this is where I would like to mention the second point on the hubris scale. Essentially, what Horny did right here gets 2 points on his score because his hubris had actual direct consequences which led to his own defeat and eventual death. He wasn't just cocky and made himself look stupid, he was cocky and actually lost as a result of that hubris. But continuing on, Freezy Pop catches up to the Z gangbangers, and he discovers that they have touched his balls. And this makes him very angry, you see. So he decides that he wants to make them suffer for a little while. But before we unseal this can of worms, we need to address Vegeta. You see, lately Vegeta has been listening to the Yujiro Hanma Experience podcast, and what he learns is that with the power of imagination, he can achieve anything. So after the bald man blows a hole in him, he now thinks that he has the ability to take on Frieza, because with the power of the second hole, Vegeta is now Super Saiyan Bai. But unfortunately, what he fails to realize is that playing both teams doesn't actually make you stronger. It just makes you a fence-sitting bitch. So he inevitably ends up dying to Frieza's hand. Abusing the Zenkai boost too much led to the technique getting patched. But only for him, of course. Because you see, Vegeta having like 3 Zenkai boosts to Goku's 1, but being planets weaker than him is just... how? But anyway, going back to Frieza, he actually messes up the most in this part of the saga as far as hubris goes, because he makes the classic mistake of diddling with the Z fighters just enough so that none of them die, while slowly revealing his tremendous power. He even makes the same mistake against Goku, who actually had a legitimate chance of defeating him before he even went Super Saiyan. Because you see, with the power of the good old reliable, Goku was able to catch Frieza off guard while he was too busy stroking himself off at the start of December, thinking about how delectable the feeling would be once he makes the ones who touched his balls suffer. So he takes a boatload of damage to the point where he finally decides to actually start killing everyone, starting with the Grill Master. No! Well, if Itadori could rock 3 holes, Piccolo probably can too. I mean, I think he's fine. But Krillin unfortunately had the luxury of my booty cheeks after consuming a ghost chili pepper, so he's kinda cooked. So as a result, Goku transforms into the legendary Super Saiyan, beats Frieza within an inch of his life, and is eventually forced to finish the job for good. But the saga does not end there, because what Frieza decides to do afterward is scale his hubris up to such a high level that it literally implodes his entire empire. After having his hubris fractured by Goku, he needs to satisfy his thirst for vengeance. So he comes to Earth ready to do just that, only for him to get one-shot by the fatherless, bitchless, elderly Mai doesn't count, soon-to-be orphan, lavender-haired champion, Trunks. But Trunks manages to go on such a violation spree that he not only manages to defeat Frieza, but King Cold as well, effectively ending the King Cold and Frieza Empire simultaneously.
Where is your sword?
Don't need it.
You let me go! I'll give you one of my finest planets!
Sorry to interrupt your brain rot, but this is also where I would like to bring up the third point on the hubris scale. Essentially, when the hubris of somebody compels them to make a decision which not only results in their own death, but the defeat of others on a catastrophic level, that earns the participant 3 points on the hubris scale. First down. He touched Mahomo's ball. Essentially, Frieza losing to Goku on Namek because of his hubris, this only gives him a 2 because it only resulted in his own defeat. But him deciding to go to Earth and lose to Trunks got his father killed, effectively ending the Frieza Empire. Oh, and also Trunks gets a 1 on the hubris scale from giving his sword to King Kai. Moving on, Trunks warns Goku about the impending doom that is the androids and manages to kill quite literally everyone and bring humanity to its knees. But once Trunks takes his departure and they tell Bulma this information, she comes up with the genius idea to ask Shenron where Dr. Gero is located so that they could bust down his door and kill him before he unleashes the androids. So thanks to Bulma's wit, they successfully prevented a threat multiple years before it even occurred. Who am I kidding? They decide that it is a better idea to train to fight the androids than to prevent them from occurring in the first place! Okay, look, I get it. Maybe everyone else is complacent in the future and dies from a result of pulling a Gohan from not training. But we all know that Vegeta has a hard-on for these sorts of things. He dies to the androids despite getting Super Saiyan and training. This is no joke! And you cannot tell me that nobody else thought of just sneaking behind the Saiyans' backs and just taking out Dr. Gero within this time frame. Because how are they gonna know? Just pretend like you're summoning the dragon so that you can clear off your debt for paying for too many hookers, but in reality, you're just getting the coordinates for Dr. Gero's base, then clearing your debt from the hookers and blowing that bitch to Sky High School! Everyone gets a 3 as a result of not doing anything about this event. Because what happens is that Android 20 and 19 blow up a city with thousands of people. All of this could have been prevented if y'all's hubris was not more important than the greater good of humanity. The only exception I give is to Gohan, because he's like 7 at the time. But don't worry, you won't be safe from my hubris list 4 years from now, little boy. FBI, open up! Skipping forward a few years, Goku gets a bit pissed off that the androids killed thousands of people who they definitely could not have prevented from happening whatsoever. So they fly to one of Piccolo's ore farming mountains to fight, and immediately You can tell that Goku probably shouldn't be fighting given that he is tired from flying in base form. But we're just gonna let him run the fade anyway, even though Tien and Piccolo notice this because of Hubris. And what adds on to this stupidity is also the fact that my glorious aura farming thing is literally right there! Like, come on! Do something! So Goku loses his fight and nearly dies, but is saved by Vegeta, thankfully. And after Vegeta disposes of overweight Chaozu, Dr. Gero decides to run like a pansy. But unfortunately, he managed to learn literally nothing from 19, such as the fact that their energy absorption doesn't actually make them strong enough to take out Super Saiyan level threats, and he gets cooked by Piccolo. So out of desperation, he summons the twink femboy park ranger and that bitch from Six Flags. But he gets absolutely cooked. Obey me, you red ribbon redneck! You're wrong. I'm the twink femboy park ranger. So then Vegeta decides to challenge the bitch from Six Flags, and for some reason he decided to go Super Saiyan and just stay Super Saiyan for approximately 20 years in his pursuit, effectively using up all of his stamina by the time he started fighting. So he loses his edging streak, and the fight just... I'm not even surprised at this point. So after their humiliating loss, Piccolo decides to fuse with Kami and run the ones with Cell. Now for the most part the fight is going well, but unfortunately Cell manages to catch Piccolo off guard and sucks the living heavens out of his arm. So because Cell is so sure of his victory, he decides to tell Piccolo all the recent tea happening at his workplace. But what he fails to realize is that Piccolo can literally just regenerate his arm. I feel like people just keep forgetting about this crucial ability for some reason. And technically, because Cell did that, he caused his literal death in the main timeline at the hands of the Ball Man. So this is technically a 3. Next up, we got Piccolo expressing his new Super Kami Hubris, thinking that he could take out all the androids at once. When in reality, he couldn't even take out the twink femboy park ranger on his own. And the only reason this moment does not get scaled up to a 2 is because their fight technically gets interrupted by Cell. But if it kept going on, eventually Piccolo would have lost and earned that 2. But the hubris does not end there, because after Piccolo is thrown away like a plastic straw, killing billions of turtles in the process, 17 decides to run the fade with Cell instead of running like Piccolo advised for him to do. Now keep in mind, if 17 dug deep out of the hubris hole, he would realize that he stands no chance against Cell whatsoever. Yet, because he thinks that he is the ultimate warrior, he keeps up this charade until he needs to get saved by the King of Gingers. So maybe finally 17 will realize that he is cooked and needs to run away while 16 is fighting Cell. Right? Well, no, because he decides to stay and is even so hubris driven that for some reason he believes that he can beat Cell just because the King of Gingers did it. So because of this absolute delusion, he gets sucked up by Cell. And it ain't even June yet. A little later on, Vegeta is beating the absolute shit out of semi-perfect Cell. But he eventually gets bored of that and decides that he wants Cell to achieve his perfect form so that he can get a proper challenge. A cult classic pulled straight from the history books, which earns Vegeta a clean, crisp 3, because Vegeta single-handedly caused the death of thousands of people in a random city again! We've also got other hubris moments, such as Trunks thinking that he is stronger than Vegeta and not unleashing his full strength because he doesn't want to hurt his daddy's hubris. This will not be a reoccurring theme at all, by the way! So Semi-Perfect Cell manages to suck up 18 before it's even June and has the power to overpower Vegeta without much of a problem and give him severe back shots. So later on, Cell announces the Cell Games, sponsored by Blue Chew, where he literally gives the Z Fighters a week to prepare to fight him. Now I know this doesn't technically make Goku or Gohan any stronger, but do you know who does get stronger? Vegeta! which eventually leads to Cell's demise. But before we get into that, Goku giving Cell a senzu bean. Hey look, I'm contractually obligated to at least mention this at this point. But honestly, that is nothing in comparison to Cell letting Gohan power up, effectively pulling a Vegeta! But before Cell gets what's coming to his perfect balls, Gohan decides to pull a Frieza and make Cell suffer. What? Wasn't this the same guy who 10 minutes ago didn't want to kill the creature that destroyed thousands of towns because he wanted to pull a Thorfinn? Oh, okay, whatever. This hubris-driven, weird-ass decision caused severe consequences, such as his dad sacrificing himself, causing Perfector Cell to spawn in with netherite armor and a Power 5 bow, which kills Trunks instantly, and make Gohan lose his jerk-off hand again! But luckily, the Texan still has his gunslinging hand, and manages to finish off Cell with a little help from Vagina. I told you there's gonna be consequences for Cell mentioning the Cell games and letting the Z Fighters prepare for a week. This is what happens when you have hubris! I mean, it's unfortunate that Gohan's dad died. I mean, hopefully he never makes this mistake again. Skipping forward a few years and skipping past the school arc because absolutely the fuck not. Goku and Vegeta get cocky during their fights, which give them both a 1 respectively. And due to their boredom, Vegeta decides to get turned into a Chiefs fan and blows up thousands of people in order to rage bait Goku into fighting him. And this leads Goku to taking so much damage that Majin Buu gets released, which causes millions more to die. Oh, and no one can forget that when after their fight ends, Vegeta decided to knock out Goku so that they couldn't charge together at full power, and ends up losing to Buu as a result, and needs to sacrifice himself so that he could make up for everything he'd done. Which didn't do shit, but at least the moment was emotional, man! Oh, and you know what else? Goku had Super Saiyan 3, so Goku didn't even need to fight Vegeta for a substantial period of time, like, at all. But he didn't do that because he wanted to spare the hubris of the 4'3" man. Man, this sure does sound familiar. So what Goku does instead of taking vengeance for his lost loved ones by utilizing Super Saiyan 3 to defeat Buu is use it as a stall tactic because he wanted to give his children a chance to defeat Majin Buu. I know this ain't technically hubris, but I thought it worth mentioning because what he manages to do is spawn the result of the literal embodiment of hubris, born straight from Goku, born straight from Vegeta's hubris, passed down through generation. And the reason I call this dude the embodiment of hubris is that the first thing that Gotenks does when he finally achieves the fusion dance for the first time is fight Majin Buu. He does this before training, so obviously he's gonna get cooked. But he also has a zombie-like brain because he doesn't even bother going Super Saiyan! Look, what? So after his ass gets sent home crying, he actually decides to train in preparation for his fight with Super Buu. However, he once again loses to hubris because for one, he was probably not powerful enough, and secondly, because he would much rather give a theatrical show to my aura farming king Piccolo, instead of just going Super Saiyan 3 as soon as he could and running the fade of the century. But then Gohan, my absolute wasted potential king, pulls up, ready to give Super Buu the meanest 5-star of his life. And initially, my boy is rocking the socks off of him. But unfortunately, he won't finish off the fight because he would rather gloat about the thought of his massive power, much like when he fought Cell. Even though I feel like 7 years worth of coping trauma should be enough to not do this shit all over again, but maybe that's just me. So Super Buu pulls a Vegeta and gets away like a Looney Tunes ass character. Comes back looking cocky as all hell because in that Tomb Raider head of his, he manages to conduct one of the smartest plans known to man in order to defeat Gohan. Step 1. Rage bait the industry plant to fuse themselves once again so that he can absorb them. Step 2. Absorb the Grill Master so that he can prepare himself Gordon Ramsay level high protein meals throughout the week. And step number 3, break Gohan. do this by using his own friends against him to break down his hubris piece by piece. And at first, Gohan thinks that he is a better cook than the grill master and more powerful than the industry plant. But what he fails to realize is that he is a broke college student that has managed to cook nothing but ramen noodles. And as for Gotenks, honestly, fair enough. But alas, this has got to be one of the most frustrating fights in the entirety of Dragon Ball. Because what do you mean you are running away from the pink man? Getting smashed through some rocks like you're some side character Vegeta is absolutely crazy! Oh my god. But eventually, it is Goku time, and he arrives to save the retired Texan and stall Super Buu while Gohan learns how to up his drip with earrings. And yeah, Goku isn't doing much better, but at least he's actually trying. But fast forwarding a bit, and Goku and Vegeta are currently getting cooked by Buuhan. So they decide to drip together at full power to transform into the ultimate hubris combo, Vegito. Now look, I know that technically it was their plan all along to go inside of Buu, Ayo, to retrieve their kids. Ayo, what the fuck? So then they can win the day and live happily ever after. But the only problem is that Buu is kinda unpredictable. You know, Vegeta did the final atonement and it blew up Buu, but then he managed to revive himself. Gotenks managed to blow up Buu, but then he still managed to revive himself despite being disposed of supposedly completely. And surprise, surprise, when they mess with an unpredictable guy, unpredictable things tend to happen. Because the thing is, when Goku and Vegeta accomplish their plan, what happens afterward is that Majin Buu blows up the Earth and Space Vegas so that there's no more Dragon Kings. Oh my god! Who could have seen that coming? It's almost like he's unpredictable! Oh, and you want to know the irony? All their fucking kids die! So their plan was for nothing! But they all get a 3, because what the hell was that? Rap! Do something, please! But anyway, Goku and Vegeta crush the Potara because they think they can kill Kid Buu solo. So you're telling me that this dude just casually blew up the entire Earth, killed all of your friends, and now you are still fighting for the sake of your hubris? You know, I might actually be okay with the start of this saga where Goku does some stupid shit as a result of his hubris, but then actually learning from that and going on a redemption arc, realizing the consequences of his actions, having to cope with it, and doing everything he can to end Buu once and for all. But clearly, bro hasn't learned anything, because not only did he witness his friends and family die once, but he saw it twice, and he still makes the same mistakes again! What is wrong with you? Do you think getting the approval of a man who knows nothing but trash talking and self-serving backshots is worth your family and the entire universe? Bro! Oh yeah, and guess what? Goku actually could have defeated Kid Buu if he actually locked the fuck in and just finished him off. But instead, he was intentionally holding back so that Vegeta could have a turn. Brother, you are not fighting for your lover Vegeta. You are fighting for your friends, your family, the universe, the entire cosmos. Why are you waiting? But they eventually win the day with the power of the good old reliable, which currently has only obtained a single win. So honestly, I don't know why Goku keeps relying on this shit. So that covers basically the entirety of Dragon Ball Z. But we still got a few more things to cover, such as Dragon Ball Super. Now we all know that at the start of Battle of Gods, that Goku gets cocky against Beerus, restarting the exact same trend he did in the Buu Saga. So honestly, I can't even be surprised that he immediately gets humbled. However, he only gets a 1 here, since whether he was cocky or not didn't matter and he would have lost either way, so he just looks dumb. And technically, Gotenks gets humbled by Budweiser as well, and that is basically Battle of Gods. So let's move on to Resurrection of the Spencer's product. You see, Frieza comes back, ready to train himself to the point of reaching 225 on bench for a single rep so that he has the same level of power as Goku. But what he fails to realize, however, is that he needs to be able to hit that shit for reps, not just a single time. Because instead of doing that, he goes straight to fighting Goku. And though he has the advantage at first, he ends up being unable to finish the job. It is only because of Goku's own hubris kicking in that it makes him technically lose this fight. If it was not for this, however, Frieza would have already been cooked. But regardless, Goku still ends up defeating him because Vegeta is not allowed a single freaking win, and all is well. Except for my brain, which... Universe 6 Saga. So, Goku, despite his entire Earth being on the line as a result of this tournament, openly lets Hit figure out a way to counter Goku countering his time-skipping technique by openly telling him the trade secrets. But low-key, I think he forgot about the stakes of this tournament because he proceeds to do a bunch more dumbass shit, which I'll get into in a minute. But whatever, Goku's entire thing is to take on a great challenge so that he can overcome it and get stronger. That is just what you do best, Goku. And look, the only reason he doesn't get a 3 on the hubris scale from this shit is because Monica from Doki Doki Literature Club hits Hit. Ha! Get it? Get it? With a DDoS attack, which leads to his Ethernet cord getting destroyed, so he loses connection to the time-skipping dimension, and he loses the fight. But in reality, Hit is just a homie who decided to do Goku a solid and just let himself lose so that they didn't accidentally give their planet away to... Oh, okay, I won't make that joke, okay? I know the sponsors wouldn't like it. Okay, you can calm down now. What a guy Hit is, though. My glorious king is so... Okay, anyway. Goku Black showcases what happens when Goku's hubris meets Goku Black's adaptation. Because he could have gone Super Saiyan Blue to finish him off right off Rift, but he didn't because he wanted to test his mettle. Now, depending on how you look at this could be a 1, or a 2, or maybe even a 3. Because you're probably thinking to yourself, but what if Goku Black adapted to Goku going Super Saiyan Blue like he did against Vegeta and just got stronger? Which I would honestly say is a fair point and leaves it up to interpretation as to what would have happened. But the simple fact is, he did not go all out against this dude when Trunks' timeline is on the line for the second time. And not taking the fight seriously with all those stakes is just dumb. It doesn't matter if it's in Z, it doesn't matter if it's in Super, it's just dumb. But later on, Vegeta decides to learn from Goku's mistake and goes Super Saiyan Blue immediately to start pounding the living bricks out of Goku Black. But unfortunately, he gets a bit cocky, does the thumb pose during their fight, and despite getting his shit rocked from Goku Black in base form, he suddenly thinks that he could take him on in his Super Saiyan Rose form and ends up getting front shots. Skipping forward a bit, we got Zamasu, who at this point managed to rid everyone in the multiverse from getting in the way of his Zero Mortals plan. But unfortunately, the power of his divine hubris prevents him from simply finishing the job. He would much rather give a narcissistically inspiring speech to appease the non-existent Twitter mob and gloat his victory rather than just locking in and finishing the job already. This is why bro will never be anything more than the Waterloo intern. Maybe one day he'll actually make money from doing that shit. And he only decides to lock in when it no longer matters. Because firstly, he gets cooked by 2 energy beam struggles back to back. Then he decides to give himself the trendy baseball player build and just gotta fight everyone until they summon the fusion-filled hubris Vegito, who funnily enough actually didn't show a whole lot of hubris in this fight and was low-key cooking for once. Hey, I give credit where credit is due, okay? But eventually, they unfuse, and Trunks needs to step in. It is at this point that Zamasu is so weak that he manages to get killed by Trunks. Wow. But to give credit to Zamasu's earlier self, he was actually super smart and gave himself the ability of invincibility frames so that he could simply use the power of his TikTok manifestation to take over the entire universe little by little, and Zenos just blows it up anyway. Damn. That's crazy. But moving on to the Tournament of Power. Goku almost gets knocked off the stage immediately because he let his guard down and gets trapped by a buff Plankton. Then, Krillin actually does get eliminated from letting his guard down from Frost. But let's be honest, nothing of value was actually lost. Next, we got Vegeta, who basically thought he could take on Jiren all by himself. But we already know what happens here. Bro gets cooked after pulling out every single card and having a brief swagger moment of dodging a single one of Jiren's attacks. But most of all, we've got Jiren. Throughout the entirety of the Tournament of Power, his hubris absolutely corrupted him. First, he could have ended the entire thing with one shot if he wanted to, but he didn't, simply because he didn't feel like anyone was actually worth his time. Until eventually he fights Goku and Hit, beats both of their asses, and just decides to meditate until it is down to the last 2 universes. So surely now, Jiren will lock in and just end the tournament once and for all. Right? Well, no, because he still wants to prove his absolute superiority without just literally nuking everyone. And I get it, okay? Show the gods that you are so capable that you can give yourself a greater chance of landing another gig in case your current Ginyu Force knockoff implodes. Because let's be real, apart from the top 3, their gang is absolute buns. But to what point do you get to where you're just delaying it because you simply enjoy it? Even when you are the literal last one standing and supposedly power up, you are still just actively screwing around, not taking anyone seriously, and just gloating about your immeasurable girth. Like, I get it, dude. You've been saying this shit for the past 20 episodes. Your clown Unk has been saying this shit for the past 20 episodes. The only time where he actually tries to eliminate everyone at once was when he gets rage baited by the twink femboy park ranger. This angers him so much that he decides to try and eliminate both Goku and Vegeta at once. But the twink femboy park ranger steps in to sacrifice himself so that the blast does not eliminate them. But, I mean, could Jiren have not just fired another one that would have literally ended the entire thing? So after another 20 years of stalling, Goku gets Ultra Instinct, beats the absolute shit out of Jiren, and gets him into a weakened state. And because of this, Goku and Frieza are able to make the sacrifice play to eliminate him and leave the twink femboy park ranger as the last person standing in the tournament of power. So because of Jiren's hubris of trying to show off his power, he loses, which costs him his literal entire universe. Like, bruh. But before we forget, we must bring up Frieza, who is basically being an active troll for the entirety of this tournament, rage baiting and hubris most of all, because he thought that he could take on Dispo while actively getting his ass pounded, so that earns him a 1. Then he does a similar thing with a Lorax, except he gets beat so hard that I'm genuinely surprised this man's liver is still intact. Because you see, Frieza just barely managing to compress the ball with 2 hands from the dog obviously means he will be able to do it with 1 from the 6'6" Lorax. Like, wow, good job, Frieza. Not sure how many hubris cells in your Spencer's product head had to process that information to make that determination, but you go, Burger King. And that is basically the end of Dragon Ball Super. Not nearly as hubris heavy as Dragon Ball Z in some sagas, but still enough to at least tickle your hubris fancy on occasion. Especially Dragon Ball Super Broly, when the only real hubris moment was Frieza being cocky against Broly despite simultaneously getting his ass pounded. This seems oddly familiar. And if you want to be real nitpicky, there's also that time where Gohan got his beast form in Super Hero and he was low-key feeling himself once again, like he was Chris Collinsworth wanting to feel Patrick Mahomes. But unfortunately, I don't think either of them are doing that anytime soon, because we still have at least months before getting an announcement for Super 2. No, seriously, please, I desperately need an announcement toy, please! And the main hubris from Daima was Goma, not downscaling the Z fighters into literal babies so that they were incapable of fighting. Like, are you deadass right now? Because that decision was literally right there in front of you. Like, what? You quite literally could have prevented anyone in the universe from getting to you in the demon realm, and you just decided to take that chance just cuz? Because the sad part is, sure, it did technically weaken them a little, but they could still beat your ass when you had the third eye. Like, how do you even justify this level of dumbassery? It is honestly just astounding. And that concludes the Hubris Chronicles. As for why I didn't cover GT, well, let's just say that show has a very large focus on one character in particular. And for that reason, I decided not to include it. But you'll see exactly what I am talking about in a moment. Now allow us to progress into the Hubris leaderboard! Starting off with number 5, we've got Gohan. For the majority of the series, he had 0 problems with hubris, and was honestly just a dog through and through. But by the time we get to the Cell and Buu saga, his personality gets a major shift. Because with the power of adolescence, also comes hubris, I suppose. Though he managed to tone it down quite a lot after these points in his life, you could still see a semblance of it creeping in like the Green Goblin on William Dafoe's shoulder. Number 4, we got Cell. How ironic is it that the main arch nemesis of Gohan managed to beat him in the hubris competition? Despite being around only for a single saga, Cell managed to output a perfect performance. Who knows, if he returned for one more saga, superhero doesn't count, I am confident that his standing in the ranks would be far higher. Let us just hope that his art style doesn't get as done dirty as it was in GT. Number 3 is Frieza. Honestly, bro is just the supreme ruler of hubris, constantly trolling, violating, and being so sure of himself despite the many times he has been bitched is honestly quite impressive. But unlike Cell, Frieza still has the chance to climb up the ranks even higher, given his current existence in Dragon Ball. So only time will tell how his position fares in the near future. But he does still have quite a ways to climb, because number 2, and not just this list, but everything in general, is Vegeta. You would think that this Widow's Peak 4'3" Prince of all hubris having ass would be the prime contender for having the most hubris of them all. I mean, after all, when you search the word hubris on Google, you cannot tell me this literal definition does not describe Vegeta word for word. Even the Google images shows nothing but his hubris having ass. But something to understand is that Vegeta has not exactly been around in the series for the longest time, and he doesn't exactly have the most screen time in Dragon Ball. And that is the primary reason why our number 1 spot belongs to Goku. I'm sorry, Vegeta, but you're not only second place in everything, but it is always second to Goku. Even your hubris. Because you see, since the start, Goku has always had hubris. Though he keeps it under control for the most part, when it does come out, it causes such dire consequences that he manages to spike his hubris in the rankings to the roof time and time again. Especially after the Majin Buu saga, because for some reason, a switch just seemed to be hit in Goku's brain, which suddenly made him want to embrace the hubris of the Saiyan race. So Goku is not only the strongest in fiction, but also the strongest in hubris. Overall, the hubris of Dragon Ball often influences all that come within its range, though some can resist the temptation to a much higher degree, at least if you are not a Saiyan. Thanks for watching.